to my player type profiling and my analysis of the latest Pokemon game Scarlet and Sword. In this graph from Quantic Foundry, we can see my statistics. This graph shows the thing I enjoy while playing the game. As we can see, I have a diverse distribution which makes it hard to determine the main thing I look for in a game. So instead of choosing a game, depending on the graphic, I will take a franchise I already know that I enjoy and analyze its elements and find out what makes them so enjoyable for me. An element that sticks out more than the others in my graph was the immersion. Pokemon games aren't known for their story complexity. Most of the games have simple and linear story, which is used as a progression tool for the player. What makes the story and characters in Pokemon immersive is the consistency within the franchise. Simplicity of the narrative design makes us distinguish the Pokemon franchise from the others and feel the same similarity in each game, feeling like a part of something real. Pokemon Sword is set in the Galar region. At the start, you meet with your rival, Tenebor Hop, the little brother of the current champion, and get your starter Pokemon from the champion Leon. Before leaving our town, we send back to our home to collect our Pokedex, and before we do so, we meet the legendary Pokemon of this generation. After it, you set out to become the Pokemon champion by defeating all Pokemon gyms and collecting their badges. While challenging the gym challenges, you also meet characters with fascinating designs. After the gym challenges, you deal with the evil team of the region and become the hero before challenging the champion and becoming champion. This is the classic Pokemon story progression, and even though you expect what's going to happen, it still finds a way to keep you interested and immersed in story. Pokemon Wild is the first game that tries getting out of this comfort zone and try something different from the classic Pokemon formula. Violet is the first mainline Pokemon game with open world. This opens lots of new possibilities in storytelling and makes the player experience more unique. Even though the Pokemon Company isn't experienced in delivering an open world experience and had some issues with it, this game made Pokemon fans realize true potential of open world Pokemon experience. The story progression is changed according to the open world mechanic of the game as well. Instead of single storyline which you are forced to experience the challenges and events in a fixed order, you have three stories running at the same time. These three storylines offer different story pieces and helpful mechanics. The first storyline is the championship story. You get closer to your champion friend and defeat gym leaders while meeting Elite Four members. With each defeated gym leader, you get their badge and increase the maximum level of your Pokemon you can control. This story is the closest story to the classic Pokemon formula. In the second storyline, you travel with Son of the Pokemon Professor and deal with unique boss battles introduced in the game named the Titan Pokemon. Each Titan Pokemon defeated unlocks a new feature in your motorcycle Pokemon, which makes traveling around the world easier. In the third storyline, you try take down a group called Team Star with a mysterious hacker, and we are awarded with more moves that we can teach our Pokemon. This multiple storyline approach was a unique way to bring a fresh feeling to the Pokemon formula. Nintendo also changed its view on world design in Generation 8. In the Pokemon Sword, they tried the idea of a wild area. It was similar feeling with a safari zone from the earlier generations. Instead of hunting Pokemon in a single tall grass area with random encounters, you can look for the overworld encounters and fight with the Pokemon you choose. Random grass encounters were still present in Sword, but the overworld Pokemon made the experience way more immersive. Also, random weather conditions outside the battle also made the world feel more like a real one. In the later generations, this idea was expanded on. With the success of Pokemon Arceus, Pokemon Violet also uses the outbreak mechanic that received mostly positive reviews. The outbreak mechanic causes certain species of Pokemon spawn more in certain areas at certain times, which makes the world more immersive. Although I may look like I'm not motivated by the action in games, with a closer look at my secondary motivation, we can see that I have an exceptionally high destructive motivation. Sadly, Pokemon games doesn't have any overworld objects that I can freely interact or destroy, but I can satisfy my chaotic needs with the battles I participate in. Pokemon games have a long history with the first game being Pokemon Red released in the end of 19th. This long time period gave enough time to develop vast amount of possibilities. All Pokemon in the game has different types,
These types give advantages and disadvantages against each other like giant game of rock paper scissors. Your team needs to have a move against almost all elements to avoid coming across an unpleasant surprise. In addition to moves you teach your Pokemon, the more experienced players has lots of different possibilities to optimize their Pokemon. Even if this progress can get repetitive and boring from time to time, this progress aims at multiple high points at my graph, like strategy, power, and competition. Also, having a certain Pokemon that is unused by the most of the community and taking it to their extreme limit makes the player feel a sense of individuality. Using these unusual gods against the challenges the game throws at you gives an experience you wouldn't have if you used normal Pokemon. In my first playthrough of Sword, I had a little bug with double the defense of gods in the region and a fish in my team.
As we can see in the graph, I have above average achievement percentage. Pokemon games don't have any achievement system. These games give you lots of things to collect, but the main thing to collect in these games are the Pokemon. One of the most important achievements in any Pokemon game is completing the Pokédex, an encyclopedia of every Pokemon you come across. Completing the Pokédex is often quite challenging, requiring you to travel every corner of the game's world, working with every mechanic the game has to offer, which is even more interesting for people with high discovery and even most challenging task to a modern Pokemon fan, finding a friend. Pokemon games have a unique way of releasing their games. In each main title, instead of a single game, they release two of the same game with slight variations. Each game has some unique Pokemon that isn't included in the other game. Most people find it annoying or unnecessary, but I personally find it fun. The version exclusive Pokemon add more stuff to do after I finish the main game, and I personally think it improves my overall experience.
This double release policy is a clear indication that Pokemon games are intended to play with your friends. At the time Pokemon was first designed, there was limited technology about online play, so the Pokemon formula was designed their player interactions are trading and battling. Sadly, the revolutionary technology in the age of Game Boy doesn't satisfy players of today. So in Pokemon Sword, they tried to adapt to the newer version of online play. In the wild area I talked about earlier, players online can see other people. Sadly, this mechanic was badly done and caused huge lag spikes, and the players in the world weren't able to interact with each other. This change felt like playing with a bad server filled with NPCs. Only way to have a playable experience was to create a local server, which made playing with your friends overseas impossible. Even if you made the server, things you could do with your friends were limited. You couldn't advance any story well in someone else's world or do anything you couldn't do on your own server. Even as a person with really low community percentage, I feel the lack of this element in the game. In the latest title, they have taken huge steps toward fixing this issue. Instead of public servers, you can form union circles in which both persons can progress their own story, hunt version exclusive Pokemon together, or find rare Pokemon together. Even though these aren't huge changes, this gives people the much needed motivation of playing together. Another critical point I want to talk about is the Pokemon. For someone who never experienced a Pokemon game themselves, they just feel like a basically designed monsters fighting around a basic story, but the statement couldn't be further from the truth. As you choose your starter and progress through the story, every Pokemon you catch becomes your friend. Each battle you fight makes you closer to your team. With each gym badge, you share your happiness with your team. You feel like you can place your trust in them and they trust you back. It can even suppress the pain you feel from not having any real friends in real life. These Pokemon love you for who you are without anything to gain from you. Pokemon designers know that their players feel this way and try their best to support this feeling. With happiness counter first introduced in the Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon can perform different actions depending on their happiness level. For example, a happy Pokemon can withstand a otherwise lethal attack with 1 HP just because it doesn't want to make you sad, or land a critical hit because it wants to be praised. This random interaction, even though it's just a mathematical calculation, can really affect your bond with a Pokemon. The newer titles also expand the ways you can interact with your Pokemon. In third generation remakes, you can feed your Pokemon sweets to make you closer to them, or in Generation 8, you can wash your Pokemon after a battle. Pokemon Sword is introduced an improved version of this mechanic camping. When you set a camp, you can play with your Pokemon, talk with them, or cook a curry to eat it all together. Pokemon Violet tried the same mechanic with better gameplay options. Camps in Pokemon Sword were just a slower Pokemon Center without any important boss, but in Pokemon Violet, camping had important boss with their cooking system and breeding
within the camp. Sadly, the bad management and rushed production makes this experience less enjoyable. Pokemon Violet also added something new to improve your bond with the Pokemon. With Go function, you can let your Pokemon out and let them do whatever they want. Instead of following you like Shadow in the second generation, in this version, Pokemon can wander around battling wild Pokemon or finding items. Their nature also affects the way they move, making them feel more alive than just monster to fight with you.
Pokemon games have an anime with the main character Ash, but in this series, with all the gym leaders and the NPCs, there isn't any official main characters because no main character is complete without the player. Each player's playstyle shapes the character they play as. Pokemon games avoid using dialogue for the main character and let players' imagination decide the personality of your character. The way you play the game, the Pokemons you catch, and the tactics you use helps you create a character of your own. In the later Pokemon games, they added some basic character customization to make your character more unique. For example, in Sword, there is shops in which you can buy cosmetic items to make your character more stylish. Not only that, but you can also edit the player card you give to other people you meet online. The vast amount of options make your character in Pokemon Sword unique, which helps with both my design and fantasy sides. The Violet has way less options in this area, which was a great disappointment in my opinion. Even if I have a low percentage in the challenge category, Pokemon games are too easy for an experienced Pokemon fan. The community came up with a creative way to solve this problem, the Nuzlocke Challenge. Nuzlocke Challenge is a set of self-imposed rules that completely change the game experience. In this challenge, Pokemon deaths are permanent, you can't use items in battle, switch Pokemon during battle, only catch the first Pokemon you encounter at each road, and it's forbidden to overlevel your Pokemon. These rules are determined by the players themselves, so everyone can change these according to the experience they want. This challenge is fascinating because these rules augment the game experience dramatically. Permanent death forces players to think more strategically and plan the steps they take. The possibility of losing a team member makes people bond with their Pokemon more easily and have a heart attack every time one of their Pokemon's health points get low. With this new risk, no battle feels repetitive and no over-leveling rule keeps this challenge from being repetitive. Also, deaths of your party members create a story that unique to you. We can see lots of YouTubers telling their own Nuzlocke challenge and every single one of them tells a different story.
To summarize, these two games that I analyzed is consistent with the statistics I got from this graph. These games had a way to satisfy every motivation I had, and each generation of Pokemon I play makes me more excited for the next generation of games.